Welcome to the Haunted Hangover podcast. I'm Louie, and I'm joined by my bud, Chris.
Hello, hello.
So some housekeeping, is that the term? Is that what
you start with the housekeeping?
So originally we were supposed to have our 2-year anniversary halfway to Halloween episode of the podcast because, as insane as that sounds, we've been doing this now for 2 years. But Dave is having some technical issues right now. So we've got to postpone that to the next episode, unfortunately. Fucking Apple. That's all. Fucking Apple. Yeah, he's having issues with his fucking MacBook Pro or whatever. I don't know. He had some fucking problem. But he'll be back in our next episode where we'll be doing a Q&A, celebration type deal for the 2-year anniversary of the show. So if you want to submit a question, obviously follow Haunted Hangover on Instagram and Twitter. You can DM us there. Or you can email us directly with a question. Get creative with these questions. Have some good ones ready. Yeah. Don't fucking ask us what our favorite Halloween candy is because we've answered that about 50 million times already. But yes, you can reach us at hauntedhangover31@gmail.com. hauntedhangover31@gmail.com. And submit something if you, for some reason, don't follow us on social media and haven't seen any of the posts that we've been putting up pertaining to the 2-year celebration of the podcast. And halfway to Halloween, because April's halfway to Halloween, and that's when we started it. So that's kind of what the deal was with that. Anyway, moving on to what we're going to talk about, which was a bit of a surprise recently. I don't think either one of us expected this.
You texted me about it. I had no idea.
Yeah. And I thought it was a joke at first. I didn't think it was a real anything. And that is the Guest 2 original soundtrack.
Yes.
Now, The Guest itself as a film, we haven't covered on the show. I think I've teased it like 2 or 3 times. I believe when we did one of our Halloween mixtape episodes, because I picked a song from the original soundtrack. And I've mentioned it a bunch of times, my love for The Guest. It's one of my favorite films to come out in the last 10, 15 years. It's high on the list for me. And we do plan on covering it in the future. And my plan is this 3rd year of the podcast, we're going to fucking cover The Guest and dive very deep into the movie because of how much I love the movie, at least. Now, Chris, where do you stand with The Guest? Are you a fan of the movie?
Oh, I absolutely love it. I want to say it was maybe the first movie I saw Dan Stevens in, if I'm not mistaken, because he might have been in bit parts in some other stuff. Like I know he was in the third Night at the Museum movie or something dumb like that. But this was the first movie that I remember seeing him as the lead in, and part of a main part of the allure of the movie for me is he's so friggin' good in it.
Oh, he's the fucking man in
that's what it's called The Guest, so he, spoiler alert, is the guest that the title is referring to. And he's just so good. He's so charismatic. The way he turns and is unnerving and creepy and also charismatic and kind of attractive to people. He's all over the place, and he really just nails that performance, and that's the biggest driving force for me. That and the soundtrack, are the
100%.
absolute two perfect pieces together. It's just a fantastic movie.
Yeah, I can't think of, honestly, anytime I see him in anything, I just think of The Guest. My mind automatically goes to that movie. I remember, now if you don't know, the Guest was directed by Adam Wingard. It was released in 2014, written by Simon Barrett. Both of them, up until that point, directed and wrote A Horrible Way to Die and You're Next. Up until, I think You're Next was what, 2013?
Segments in VHS.
VHS, yes. So they were, up and coming filmmakers at that point, like indie, and they both come if I remember correctly, from like the low budget indie
Right.
horror world. So it was kind of cool to see them kind of slowly getting involved in bigger films throughout. It was also the first time I'd ever seen, is it Micah Monroe? Mika Monroe?
Mika? Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably the first time I'd ever seen her in a movie. I forget if It Follows was the year before. I think It Follows was
It
first.
Follows
I
is the
take
year
that back.
after, I think.
Was it?
I guess
think
it's
it might have been
2014. It
2013.
Follows is 2015, if I'm not mistaken. I believe so.
I don't remember. We might be wrong. We might not be fact checking there with that one. But yes,
I'm going to do that live right now.
Around that time, she had these two films come out pretty close together. So she was kind of like this scream queen type deal, you know, within those 2 to 3 year period. But yeah, both those actors, that had been the first time I'd seen them in anything. And the movie itself, you know, again, we're not going to dive too deep into the original film because I do want us to get a little more to cover it well more in depth in the future. But I've always thought it was a great Halloween movie. Like, I put it up there with the original OG John Carpenter's Halloween. I put it up there with Trick or Treat, Night of the Demons. When it comes to Halloween-themed films, I think it's top tier. Personally, just my opinion, you know? And I've seen people, and it might even be Dave, who doesn't think the film has that much Halloween atmosphere. I disagree. And when we get into the episode in the future, like focusing on the first film, I'll get into that. But I just think it really captured the holiday in a more like West Coast, dry, Arizona type way. Even though I'm from the East Coast, so I'm used to like cold weather, fall leaves, and all that
there's
stuff.
like a California West Coasty aspect to the like you said, the dryness of it.
Yes, and I think it feels right. If that's not the most descriptive way to describe the way I feel about the movie, but it feels right when it pertains to Halloween. And like you said, the score and the soundtrack are vital to The Guest as a film. Like, you've got Survive on there with 2 tracks. You've got that song Antonio. The music in the film is almost a character to the movie. And real quick, the best way, like the plot synopsis of the original film, because we're going to be focusing primarily on this original soundtrack for part 2, it's basically a family loses their son. He's in the army. He's a soldier. He dies. His friend, or one of his friends that the family does not know, comes to visit them because of love, and you know, it's what he would have done. Like, it's basically a promise they made to each other. Like, if I die, you go see my family, and vice versa. You know, he shows up. He's sketchy. There's something wrong. Micah Monroe's character, I believe it's Anna, the Petersons is the family, and her younger brother Luke are kind of suspicious of him. It's set around Halloween. Basically, you never really quite figure out what he is. It's pretty ambiguous, but you get an idea of what he might be. Yeah. And, you know, the whole film wraps up, and to me, this is probably the best part of the movie. It wraps up in a haunted attraction slash Halloween gymnasium party,
like school dance kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's fucking glorious. Neon, the music, everything. There's like a lot of like old post-punk goth music, which, you know, Dave and I have talked about post-punk, how important that genre of music is to us. We love it. And it's just got a great soundtrack. And honestly, dude, the original film's music is always on my Halloween playlist. Like, I put literally the entire soundtrack, track by track, is, you know, it's always on heavy rotation in my Halloween playlist. Like, I just have to add it. And I've even picked songs for our Haunted Hangover Halloween mixtapes whenever we cover them yearly, you know? So I'm glad you mentioned the soundtrack because of how important it is to the movie. And now to segue into what we're going to be talking about, which is the Guest 2 original soundtrack. Now, you talked about it briefly, how it was released on April Fool's, which was the time of this recording a few days ago.
Right.
Dude, initially, I saw it on Twitter. Yeah. And I was like, this is a fucking April Fool's joke. You know, they like, oh, they've green lit the guest
Right.
2 or
Well, so
something like that.
we should say that, you know, the guest, as much as you and I personally love it, it has a huge following. It's
Yes,
been one of
cult
those movies that
following.
people have been wanting a sequel to for years now, since the first one came out. There's the film ends in a way that sets up a
Yeah.
potential sequel that has never been realized. So
Yes.
this was a big deal, and the timing of it was suspicious.
Yes. So yeah, I'm scrolling through Twitter and I'm seeing several people post up. I think it was like a bloody disgusting article
Right,
or
yeah.
something. I saw it a couple times and I kind of was busy, not thinking. I kind of scrolled past it and I was like, let me fucking read this article and see what bullshit. I know it's it's April Fool's Day. I opened the shit up and I'm reading it and I'm, wait a second, did they really make an entire original score for a faux movie that does not exist? And I did some more research and I was looking into it. And apparently, what had happened was Adam Wingard, they had a script treatment for what would have been The Guest 2 and
Right.
what they do with the movie. And since, and I read, I think I actually watched an interview with him and I read a little bit. Apparently, it was like they've talked about it and they've had an opportunity to do it, but obviously the career trajectory for like especially Adam Wingard, he's like Hollywood now.
Right,
He
yeah,
directed,
Godzilla versus Kong.
yeah, Godzilla versus Kong, which is a huge Hollywood film. So you know he's doing his thing. He's like, why am I gonna go back to this smaller movie? I guess is his frame of mind. You know where he's at in his career.
Yeah.
But they've juggled the idea of what this film would be. So since they're not making this movie, it's not gonna happen anytime soon, is what I took from what I read and stuff and
Yeah.
saw online. They decided, since music was such an important aspect, and I even think he said in one of the interviews, and you should definitely check it out if you haven't. He says like it was like a mixtape for him, the guest itself. Hence why all the music being featured in that film. And I always relate to that as a filmmaker myself, how important music is for me. I always add artists and their music and score and stuff like that's so important. So I always gravitate towards that anytime I see it, a filmmaker talking about music and such. So they basically got a bunch of artists to write music themed to scenes, I'm guessing,
Based
in
on this treatment.
On this treatment, yeah. Because when you read, and we're gonna run down the list here, the track listing, but they basically did they used scenes again and bass songs around them, and they created original art
Yes.
that
which
hints.
fucking rules.
It's fucking awesome, which hints at what the movie was about.
There's a lot of stuff going on in the
Yes.
artwork.
Yes, there's a lot going on. Now, I thought it would be fun to talk about two of our favorite tracks on the soundtrack. What we think the plot of the movie would be, and what we would come up with just by looking at the track listing.
What you can glean
What you
from,
can
from
get,
this.
yes, what you can get from the titles, the cover art, and just kind of where this crazy ass, because the cover art, if you haven't seen it, looks fucking wild.
Yeah, it's something.
It
It bums me out that it's not going to be a movie. It looks fucking
dude,
cool.
for sure. Same shit with me. When I saw it, I was like, fuck, this isn't going to be a real movie. I was like, god damn, don't fucking tease me like that,
Yeah.
you know? And I'll admit, The Guest doesn't need a sequel.
No.
It ends abruptly and it has a really ambiguous ending. Very, it doesn't end really technically. But seeing this album and this cover art and these tracks really made me curious where the fuck it would go. I was like, god damn, I am curious. I don't know if it will be any good. I can't front. But I was like, god damn, why the fuck would you like basically fucking tease us, fucking with cock tease us with this shit?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
It really some of the stuff on this poster is just friggin' cool, and like you said, it ties to some of the artwork titles, some of the track titles, and we'll talk about that because obviously, we're going into this. We haven't discussed this with each other yet
at all.
So this is our first time doing this with each other.
Yes. So we don't know what the other one's going to pick song-wise or what we think the plot would be. So
you're getting genuine reactions here.
You're getting genuine reactions. All right, Chris. So let's go into the titles of each song so that we can kind of see. We'll just read them off, and then we'll go into what we see in the artwork, and then our favorite tracks, and what we think this movie would have been. All right, so let's start by just looking at the artwork for The Guest 2. Let's just look at it. So, you've got a satanic cult looking situation here filled with like neon lights. Basically, you've got a circle, a triangle, a cross, two pillars on each side. One has what looks like a sun and a moon on each one, moon, sun. You've got this cult leader holding a skull. And
the skull has 3 eyes.
It does have 3 eyes. I was about to say that. And then you've got the rest of the cult all shrouded in hoods behind this main figure with a black and white floor, like the square tiled floor, very reminiscent of like the 80s or like an old pizzeria or something like that. Then you've got the Anna character, very Sarah Connor-ish.
Very badass. She's got like the side of her head shaved. She's got weapons. She looks like she's on a mission.
Yes, she's got a fucking like Uzi, Scarface, Tony Montana machine gun, a knife, it looks like, and then a handgun in her like chest area.
Yeah, like strapped on.
Yes. Then opposite of her, we've got a dude in a Professor X like wheelchair mechanism.
Yeah, it's a silhouette and it's like a tank wheelchair sort of thing with the shitload of ammunition on it.
He's got
and
a giant gun or some shit.
As we go on, we're going to talk about what that is.
Or who that is. You can't make out who the fuck the dude is at all. It's completely just shadow.
Right.
And then on top of all of that, kind of as God overseeing this entire scenario, you've got Dan Stevens' character, David, with a cowboy hat.
Badass looking. Absolute badass looking.
And a 9mm type handgun, kind of just holding it close to his face. Looking like a fucking, like you said, complete badass in the film. In this so-called film poster artwork.
I want to touch on something, because you didn't touch on it. And this is, again, we're both just talking for the first time about this.
Yes.
I think that the guy in the front, the cult guy in the front, I think that's the little brher.
Yes. So in my notes,
if you look at him closer, it looks like the actor that played Luke.
In my notes, I even wrote, side note, the hooded figure looks a little like Luke, but I don't know. Like, it's not as obvious.
It stands to reason that he'd be a little bit older, but if you go by comparison of his IMDb photo and what he looks like in the first movie, It looks like him. I think that's
you're probably right.
Intentional.
You're probably right.
Because as it stands, again, going back to the first movie, spoilers, Anna, Luke, and David are the only 3 of the cast that survive.
Yes, their entire family is slaughtered, basically, in the movie. And the one dude that wants to help them, which I'm sure we're going to get to him in a bit, he dies as well.
Carver dies.
So that's kind of what's on the art. It's beautiful. It's all in the style of like painted artwork, very reminiscent of 80s artwork.
Yeah, it looks very like Drew Struzan, the guy who does the Star Wars posters.
Yes.
It's very reminiscent of that kind of style.
That's a great just comparison. And it's fucking sick. I love the lighting on it. There's that purple lighting.
I love everything about it.
Which in the original film, that whole ending sequence is all drowned in just like it's drowning in neon light So I do like how they added that specifically into this poster, into this cover, this album, I should say. Not even poster. It's basically a fucking poster for a movie that doesn't exist.
Right.
Art, because it's fucking perfect. So now let's dive into just the title. There's 12 tracks in this album. Each one of them is from a synthwave artist. I've talked about synthwave on the podcast. It's a very tired genre of music. I feel it's a little oversaturated, but I'm not gonna front. The artist on this album, they picked some top tier synth darkwave artists to be featured in this album because of the ones that are in the original soundtrack. Survive, Perturbator pops up there. A lot of great, synthwave artists are in that original soundtrack. So let's run down this track list really quick. So we've got Indent / Swerve and Steer by the group Ogre Sound. I'm familiar with them. Steve Moore, who scored the original film, is back, and he has 2 tracks in this album. The Guest Returns, which is a great title for a song. Then track 3 is by, I think it's Major, is how you pronounce that?
Major, yeah.
Major, and the name of this track is Love Extended. Then track 4 is Old Habits, Makeup and Vanity Set, which is a sick synthwave act. They are like one of the, well, I think it's one dude, but Makeup and Vanity Set is like one of the best in the fucking game when it comes to this type of music, this genre of music. Then you've got Hardwired by Jordan F. Just Run by Ghost Cop, which I've heard of them as well. Then Adam Wingard himself has a track, because I know he scores I think he scored his Blair Witch film, if I remember correctly.
I think so.
And his one little, it's a short track, so it's not anything too long. It's called Grim Showdown. And then you've got Carver's War Machine by John Bergen. And then the 9th track is The Core of the Night. I think you pronounce this
Inoma? Yeah.
Then you've got the track You've Got the Armory, I've Got the Time by Xander Harris. He's another dude. He's been in the game a long time with this type of music. It's fucking phenomenal. Heat Flow by Lone Runner. And then you've got the final track, David versus the Splinters of the Cross by Steve Moore, once again, who scored the original film. Now, Chris.
Yes.
I'm gonna let you go first.
All right.
You know what? Let's not do that. Let's not do that, because I feel like going into our favorite tracks kind of goes into what we think this film's about.
Yeah.
So I think we should dive into it. I'm gonna go first. I think we should dive into.
Let's hit it.
I think we should dive into what we think the plot of this movie is, and mine is very vague because obviously I don't fucking know.
There's stuff we're not gonna know.
But there is stuff in this that kind of shows you where they would have went with this movie.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but I forget where I read this, or maybe it was an interview when the first guest came out. One of their inspirations was basically, 2 of their inspirations was, what if The Terminator and Halloween, the original 1978 Halloween, had a baby?
Yeah.
And when you watch The Guest, you see that. You see the influence of those 2 films. Like, you can see it clear as day that those are 2 movies that inspired The Guest through and through 110%.
Yeah.
Now, here's my plot idea of where I think this movie would have gone. So off the bat, I think David, instead of being the villain, becomes the hero of the sequel in the same way that the T-800 in the Terminator was the villain in the original, and in T2 he became the good guy.
Yes.
I think 110% that's what their intent was. That was the plan with the sequel to The Guest. They wanted David to kind of flip and be the hero of the film, or one of the heroes, I should say.
Right.
Do you agree with me?
I do, but I will go a step further to say, whereas in T2, the T800 is like meant to be redeemed, like
Yeah.
the from the arc of the Terminator from the first one.
Yes.
I feel like David's heroism in this would be more of like circumstance, in that
Okay.
he's still kind of this, I mean, still the same David from the first one.
Yeah.
He killed the Petersons, but there's something out there worse that
Yes.
David needs Anna's help or vice versa with.
Yes. Yes. So, what I'm thinking happens in this movie is I think the group responsible for creating this experimental super soldier deal from the original movie is more like a cult, and they're obviously called the Splinters of the Cross. Like, that's
Right.
obviously the name of the cult. Now, either Anna and her brother try to stop them alone and fail, or like you said, Luke, the brother, is a bad guy and he gets caught up in that world or some shit.
Yeah, that is a little ambiguous. That I
Yes.
feel like there's some stuff that you just can't
Yeah.
glean from soundtrack names and poster art, and I feel like
Yeah.
the Luke thing is a little bit harder to tack down.
Dude, I'll be honest, I was not 100% if that was him in the poster or not. Like,
Right.
you
Yeah,
telling
yeah.
me that you think it is him, I'm like, you're probably right. That's
Right.
supposed to be the brother, and maybe I was just not sure. I wasn't confident in my assessment of that. Like,
I
just
think
looking at the fucking poster.
again, like, only so because he's one of the only characters that survived, and like
Yeah.
he's not anywhere else on the poster, so where the hell else would he be? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So basically Anna fails somehow trying to defeat this cult. And David and her team up in a way to stop them. And I think the character of Carver, I don't know fucking how, he survives,
Somehow.
comes back. I guess he's like half dead or a fucking android now or something. He's fucking
Sort of like a cyborg, like a Terminator.
Yes, he's like Professor X in the fucking X-Men animated series from the 90s
Right.
because of that fucking thing he's in.
Right. So
He
what we're
gets
saying
involved-
is
yeah.
this shadowy figure on the right side of the poster that's decked out in like a heavy duty wheelchair tank is
Yeah.
a war machine, hence the title of the track, Carver's War Machine.
Yes. and I obviously I don't know how the fuck the film ends.
Right.
But I'm guessing that's the basic plot of the movie, where the main thing on in my synopsis, or what I think the film's about, what I think the Guest 2 is about, is that David ends up maybe sacrificing himself heroically to save Anna and maybe her brother,
Right.
if he has like, maybe he's possessed or some shit.
Yeah, something.
very
the
end.
Splinters of the Cross group. There's more to it, and so I would say you could even you could make the case based on all of this that David wasn't necessarily a willing participant in these experiments
Yeah.
in the beginning, and that's part of the reason why he is after this group in this, because they took something away from him in the sense of like his independence and humanity and whatnot.
Yeah. Is there now your synopsis? Is it different from mine, or do you touch some?
No,
some
I think
other
it's
details?
like I said, it's pretty similar. I think the only thing I would say it's more of like, because there's a track that's called like Old Habits. So I would take that to mean like maybe at some point Anna and David are teamed up and David is still killing and
Yeah.
Anna doesn't like that or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, fuck it. Old habits die hard, that kind of thing. So, and maybe midway through things kind of go south because Just Run and Grim Showdown and Carver's War Machine are 3 back-to-back tracks. And those
Yeah.
all, as titles, sound like kind of defeats,
Yeah. And going down the title tracks, like even like when you look at track 1, Swerve and Steer, that's obviously the like cold open of the movie.
Right.
Maybe Anna's driving to this cult's the Splinters of the Cross cult's, location or hideout or some shit, and she fails, and then, or vice versa, maybe it's David trying to stop them or do something, and he fails, and then it goes to The Guest Returns, which is the like title sequence, or like the title of the movie pops up. I also think the track Love Extended is kind of the love, because in the original Guest, there's, Dan Stevens he's a stud, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there's that scene where he comes out of the shower,
out of the bathroom,
shirtless, and she's kind of like, woo, wee, he's a stud. So maybe there was a little like, and she's an adult in The Guest. She's not like a kid. She's younger than him, but she's like 20 years old or something like that. So it is completely feasible that there's some attraction and romance there.
And,
so
and
maybe
that
something
track
happens.
sounds like it would be a slower, more
There's
tender
like sax
moment.
and shit in it, like sexy saxophone. It's almost like the love scene from Terminator 1 between Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor. Like that's literally what I'm picturing in my fucking mind. I'm like, okay, maybe they like hook up, like after realizing that they have to like be on the same page and help each other out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely possible. Who knows?
And honestly, dude, like even going into it and listening to it, I'm picturing what would happen in this like fictional movie that doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Which to me, it shows you how powerful this fucking score is, or this album is. And even even when you look at it, the final track 12, David versus the Splinters of the Cross, obviously he's fighting someone else, and the Splinters of the Cross doesn't sound like a good guy group of people.
No, it sounds like it. Also, that's the title of a big action sequence.
Yeah,
you can glean that. That's there, and that one is the end of the movie. That's like the big final set piece kind of thing.
I do like that in this concept, Carver survives getting like his throat slit. And comes back as like a fucking cyborg or something. It's so interesting that they would do something like that, especially like even when you look at it and that information, even like we both know that's who that's supposed to be, right? Because we're big fans of the original film. Like, when you look at it, you can tell, that is him, 100%. That's that character. You know what I'm saying? The dude from John Wick. He's the hotel.
Lance Reddick.
Yeah. The hotel. He's like the hotel front desk guy or whatever, right? The concierge or whatever to the hotel. But let's jump into our favorite tracks. I'm going to let you start this one. What are your two favorite tracks on the album?
Well, one, we just said it. The David versus the Splinters of the Cross. Yes. I love that track. I think it's awesome. I think it has a lot of similar beats to the track from the end of the first one.
The score. That's like the main score.
The main score, right. It has a lot of similar beats to that, which I really loved because it's obviously keeping in the theme of that.
Yeah.
But, it, like I said, it fits an action sequence. It sounds like the scene, the song for an action sequence, and I absolutely loved it. I've listened to that one the most. Okay. Like repeatedly. Yeah. Over all of the other songs. That's definitely my number one track from this soundtrack.
Okay. What's the second one?
I went with The Core of the Night. It's a lot more ominous.
Okay.
And I feel like there's something to it that one in particular, really, I was like, I would love to see this in action. Not to say
what
that
happens in that scene.
Right, I would love to see what's going on.
What does the core of the night mean?
Yeah, because it sounds like the song, the score is it's very low, it's very deep beats, and I would love to see what that would play to in the movie.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think of all the tracks, that's probably the one where you can't quite pinpoint what exactly is supposed to be happening, or assume, or even have an idea of, like, the core of the night. What the fuck does that even mean?
That's
Is that a
lot
group?
of why I picked
Is that like
yeah.
what is that? You know what I mean? So, and I do get that's one of the more dreamlike pieces of music, if I remember correctly. So let's jump into mine. I'm glad we did not pick the same tracks. We didn't. We did not pick the same tracks, so that's good. So my first favorite track is The Guest Returns, and the reason why is because it's the main score, like the main piece of music from the original film, but times 10.
Yeah.
I could picture that. That's the T2 version of the score. That's the term, like that's the like more like there's more of an orchestra, there's more to it. It sounds meaner. Like The Guest Returns. Like he's fucking back. You know what I mean?
It's the cool, bombastic, badass version.
Because when you listen to the scores, I own the original Guest soundtrack on vinyl, and I've listened to it a million times. That piece of music is David's kind of like when he's thinking of something. Like when you watch a movie and he's doing shit, that's like his theme. So I love how that's his theme, but they just turned it to 11. And it feels like, oh shit, like he's fucking back and some shit's gonna fucking go down. You know what I mean? And I love that. Like I'm literally picturing him grabbing like David grabbing guns and fucking
like
shotguns.
as an entrance scene.
Yeah.
As an entrance scene, it would be badass.
Yeah, dude, and he's like fucking ready to fucking blow dudes away and shit like that.
Putting that cool cowboy hat on his head like he's got in the photo.
And just fucking destroying fucking dudes. You know what I mean? So I love that. And my second favorite track is the track Just Run. And the reason why I like that track is because it's very reminiscent of the song Antonio from the original film. So in the original film, at the end, and I might not get too into it, the end of the film, that's a big set piece using that song, Antonio. And I feel like this song, since there's lyrics, there's actually like someone singing over it feels like it would be another big set piece, and it adds a certain atmosphere to a scene, which is what I love. And that's why I love the first film. Like I love that there's another song that kind of fits, you know, that aesthetic, kind of that feeling, you know? And it would work for a scene like that. Maybe they're fucking on the highway in a car or some shit, getting away from somebody, and then that's
like I said, I feel like it's the sixth track in the listing. So I feel like that would probably be about halfway into the movie, right? Yeah. So I feel like I said earlier, that would kind of be sort of in the part of like where they get defeated and have to regroup kind of thing, you know? And it does fit with that.
Yeah, and then fucking Carver shows up in a fucking tank.
Right.
Yo, dude, honestly, and like I think about how ridiculous just the concept of this movie would be. Because obviously I think we're in the ballpark of what the fuck this movie would be about.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, you know, like I'm pretty sure like any of our listeners that would listen to us and check this out, if they're big fans of The Guest, I think we are in, like, we don't obviously have every detail, but I think we have been able to kind of pinpoint kind of what's going to happen in this movie.
But
I'm sure other people have too.
The cool part about it is The Guest was such I mean, yes, it's Halloween meets Terminator in that vein, but it was unique in the sense that like you didn't expect a lot of it. So as like close to accurate as we think we are, we could be totally fucking off base, and it could be an entirely different thing. Yeah. And these concepts are entirely wrong, which is cool. That's what is cool about the sequel being this way, you know, being just a score in the poster, is there's so much room for interpretation.
I wouldn't be surprised if David's just like the muscle of the group at first. Let's say he's like the guy that they send out to murder everybody, and then he eventually has a change of heart. Because obviously he ends up fighting this group of people. So something happens in this script treatment, this idea for a sequel, where he has a change of heart or his character fucking flips. He goes from babyface to heel to babyface, like he fucking changes, you know, what the fuck he is in the movie. It's obvious. It's obvious that that's the route they were gonna go, you know. Right. But to kind of
I mean, I'd love this as a sequel. I absolutely would.
Oh, for sure. It's fucking awesome. But overall, dude, like the overall, like what are your overall thoughts on just the concept of them doing this, releasing a soundtrack for a movie that doesn't exist, let alone a sequel to The Guest that doesn't exist?
It's cool. It's cool as fuck. And like listening to it, and you got to have an imagination when you're listening to it. You got to be imaginative
and listen to it in order.
Fill in and fill in the gaps and make this movie in your head. But God, like I said, I really wish that they'd find some kind of way to make this an actual sequel. Even fucking make a comic book. Just like show it. I'm more of a visual guy. I want to see more than just hear. But I did love this.
Yeah. I think the concept of an original soundtrack to a faux movie in general is amazing, but the fact that they did it for The Guest just takes it up a notch. Like it makes it even more special to me, considering how like important the music was to the original film. Right. And I feel like this gimmick of original soundtracks or faux original soundtracks for movies isn't something that's been done. But I feel it's the start of a trend that's gonna
absolutely.
If this is successful, dude, I could see us getting sequels to movies, like getting soundtracks to sequels to movies that don't exist. I know a lot of synthwave artists do that. They have conceptual like kind of album ideas that are supposed to be movies or soundtracks to movies. But I think like an actual franchise that doesn't exist for a series of like they could do The Guest 3 and do a similar kind of deal, So I definitely think like horror fans, just film fans in general, should keep an eye out for stuff like this in the future. Because honestly, dude, like hearing this, I'm like, I'd fucking do something like that. Like if it's a movie I can't make, like obviously you can go the whole like podcasting route and have like actors read your dialogue and just kind of tell a story. But an album, based on a film that isn't a real thing. So I definitely think people should keep an eye out, or an ear out, I should say, in the future, because I can see, faux
copycats.
Not even copycats, because it's, it's a cool idea, but just faux sequels and faux films being brought to life in this format.
This trend, yeah.
Yeah, it's just fucking dope, man. So that was The Guest 2 original soundtrack. Be sure to subscribe. Like this video if you're watching it on YouTube. I never say that. That's like the typical YouTuber thing to say. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Haunted Hangover. And check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/Haunted Hangover 31.
And if you could rate and review us, that would be greatly appreciated.
And remember, the best cure for a hangover is
more booze.
Catch you guys later.